Okay, 3, 2, 1. Burnin with G, welcome back. Hope you guys are all doing great. Had another quick 2 or 3 week hiatus. It is so hot. We're back in Fremont. I have my very good friend Preston Liu. How are you doing, sir?
Good.
How have you been?
It's pretty good.
So this time I wanted to try something different. So I came up with, a bunch of ideas and topics and put it in this hat. That way it's random. And let me get my phone and we can measure 5 minutes at a time and try to get through these very quickly. Yo, pass the mic over this way. I'm about to be late.
Become aware of one thing. You have everything, but you don't have yourself.
Welcome back to your 12th favorite podcast, Burnin with G.
Investing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you studied economics in school, which I do want to touch on later if that's one of the cards that we get. But one of the main things that I've heard a lot of people talking about as they started working and actually start making money now is they talk about investing. And I've heard all types of nonsense just because everybody just like, everybody thinks they know how the market's going and what's happening. And everybody thinks they're the next genius who's going to break it. So one thing I really am struggling to understand is it seems very unpredictable. Right, how the entire economy kind of just goes. But it does seem like a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to analyze it as if there is something that is predictable. There's some sort of predictable nature about it. Is that what your experience with it has been?
Well, first, there's different types of investing. I guess the kind of investing you're talking about on a macro scale is where you're trying to hedge and make bets on which way the economy is going, which I think is different than your stereotypical kind of investing in stocks, which is what I have more experience with. So the thing with investing in stocks is that you're not ever trying to guess or predict what is specifically going to happen. Is that the way that stocks are valued is based on expectations. So a bad company could be a good investment and a good company could be a bad investment. Like what I mean by that is if you're going to invest in a stock that is a good company, but it still underperforms expectations, like the price of the stock is going to go down.
Okay, yeah.
So, like your work as a stock investor is to find these companies where you think the reality of what's going to happen with the stock is going to deviate from the expectation.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, that's basically where the meat of the work is. And then backing that up with like quantitative, like data and
okay.
Analytics.
So is that part of it predictable?
Well, nothing's predictable, right? There's going to be variance, but like you just need to have ideas where your risk reward ratio is like.
Oh, okay.
So like you're going to be wrong. Like even the best investors in the world are right like 52, 53, 55% of the time.
Okay.
Right. It's just like when you're right, you want to be right. Big. When you're wrong, you want to hedge your bets so that you don't lose a lot.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. So I hear a lot of people talking about what's that one iPhone app where everybody invests on?
Oh, Robinhood?
Yes. What are your thoughts on that? Is that
I think it's a good entry for people who are new to investing to kind of learn what's going on, because there's no like transaction fees. There's no like so if you were to use like a more established kind of like old school platform, like every trade you make, you'd have to pay a commission. Like
so why would you not use Robinhood if you don't have to? So
Robinhood has a couple limitations. Like, well, first of all, like you can't. There's like the margin that you can have in your account is less. So margin is like, it's kind of like it's like leverage, where if like you put in $1,000 and like. If you have a lot of margin or leverage, you can like trade with more than that. It's kind of like collateral.
Okay.
And you can't do as much of that with Robinhood.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand that concept. So you're saying if I can invest more money than I actually have? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, you're basically borrowing it from the platform.
Okay. Makes sense. So you can't do that on Robinhood.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you can, but you need to become approved, and it's like you have less margin. Also, like the Robinhood platform is not as accurate to the second, like it's kind of like a little laggy, which like doesn't make a big difference to like beginners, but at the more advanced levels for specific things it's difficult.
Do you use Robinhood?
Yeah, I mean, I have a Robinhood account where
Okay.
I kind of just let things sit.
Okay.
Like things that I'm like going to be staying in for the long term. I kind of just let it there. Yeah.
Cool, nice. And so some other things that I have a question about is a lot of people, speak very highly of these index funds. Where So can you explain that a little bit? I still am kind of.
Yeah. So what an index fund is basically there's passive and active kind of index funds. A passive index fund takes
Keep going.
like a percentage based like allocation of every stock in the top like 5. So if your index fund is like for the S&P 500, it'll basically like give you percentage based stock of each of the top 500 companies.
Okay.
In a way that like represents like the percentage market cap of each one relative to the whole thing.
Okay.
So basically, if you're buying an index fund, you're tracking the S&P 500, which is
that
like
makes sense.
the U.S. economy, like, quote unquote.
Okay.
I think for people who are like new to investing and want a safe bet, like the S&P, like just getting an index fund, like putting money in there is like solid, like because like returns over time in the S&P 500 are just solid. So you're better off if you're new to investing, just getting like just putting savings in there rather than like trying to pick individual stocks.
So do people deviate from that because they believe that they can,
they can outperform that?
And can people do that?
Yeah, it's possible, but I think the statistics are kind of the majority of people that trade individual stocks do not outperform the S&P in general.
Okay, so one last question I have is, so what are these big, economic funds, and what are the company, like for example, with the company that you're about to work at, what do they do exactly? What is that?
So like a hedge fund, basically what they do is they receive capital to invest from clients. So these are accredited investors, people with a net worth above a certain amount. So then the hedge fund has like this collective pool of funds, and you invest in stocks, like specific stocks, in order to give these clients like a greater return than the S&P 500. Basically, like the job of a hedge fund is to outperform the index funds, which is actually a pretty difficult thing to do. Okay. And then the hedge fund will take a percentage based like fee from like the earnings that they make.
If they make earnings?
Yeah, I mean there's some nuance there with like whether or not you get your cut. Basically, it's like, so the standard for the industry is like a 2 and 20. So you get paid 2% of whatever money you're managing for someone, and then 20% of the profit. So that's kind of like the standard.
Okay, cool. That's very interesting. So there must be some crazy analytics and things going on in that end, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of like data science stuff that's kind of on the frontier.
Okay, so one more thing I on that note is, because you were talking earlier about how all these stocks, basically what it is a prediction of whether it's going to meet these expectations that they have for this company, right? Yeah. So does that mean that for these hedge funds and things, like those companies have to have an insane amount of knowledge of what is actually going on in that company to be able to make some sort of guess like that? Yeah. So how do they access this type of information?
So the way that people are doing it now is like you just kind of scrape data sets. You also, but like beyond that, it's like kind of like an intuition thing. It's like a logic thing that you have kind of this thesis or this idea, and then you use the data that you can find around to kind of like back up your kind of prediction or thesis about like what's going to happen with the company.
Interesting. Okay.
And like, so often, like, for example, like if you were thinking of a thesis for Apple and like you have some sort of idea about a supply chain, a piece of the supply chain like working differently, like that's how you could like build a thesis about what would happen with the stock based off like expectations. So like if you think like a chip supplier for like the Apple iPhone is going to perform like worse than what everyone else thinks, then that could like eventually lead to the Apple stock doing not as well.
Wow, so that would be sick. That would be very cool.
So that's how a lot of things are like that. It's like you kind of have like an idea about either a part of the company or something like fundamental about it, and then
that sounds very interesting.
And then you're basically like placing a bet on whether like that would happen in reality.
Okay. So as a person that as you're entering or something, what is the task or role that you're assigned to? So I'm assuming the people who are making the biggest decisions are people who've done this for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so are the people who are working under that person, are they just giving them the information, or they're doing the data collection, or?
No. So actually, like even at an analyst level, you're still expected to like come up with these ideas.
Oh wow.
You come up with an idea, and then you kind of build your thesis around it. You use the data, you build these models, and then you like kind of flesh out a whole pitch. Like that's where like the giant stock pitch comes from. So you like do all this stuff, and then you present it to your portfolio manager, which is the person that kind of oversees and makes the final call. So you're like trying to convince him of your idea, and then he or she will probably like pick it apart, like tell you to like go back and do this or that or whatever, or like this is good or bad, and then you like revise it, you go back again, and then like if your portfolio manager thinks it's a good idea, like then the platform will invest in it.
That's really cool. So is that what you're doing, kind of?
Yeah.
Oh wow. So how have you been pretty accurate so far in your thesis?
Well, I mean, the experience that I've had so far is just like as an intern, so I haven't had like specific like interaction with like an idea actually like getting into the book or whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean there were actually one or two things over the summer that like I got like quote unquote right, which like, feels really rewarding.
That must feel amazing, huh? Yeah, I can't imagine somebody betting heavily on something and then the whole company figuring out you just made the biggest mistake ever. That probably is the opposite of that side, but that's super cool. That like even from the start you have the ability to do such things.
Yeah.
So nice. Okay, shall we move on?
Sure.
That was a good, interesting conversation. Okay, next one. The presidential race. This is what I want to talk about. So, let me start this time. Did you watch the debate yesterday?
I did watch the debate. I watched it with some friends.
Okay, so tell me, what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I thought it was kind of a train wreck. It kind of devolved into a lot of insults and personal attacks rather than kind of, I mean, from both sides, it was kind of messy. Yeah, I mean, I thought that Joe Biden was a little frazzled at times, but it's not really to his fault because it was just like a lot of words and attacks and stuff going on.
That was sad. Yeah. It really makes you question that these are the people who were elected so far to lead us as a country, and it's kind of sad in a way. It's like, how can the people who we're electing to lead us, how can they not even have a civilized conversation where they're actually learning things from each other,
Yeah.
And I think like even in the debates, when I was on the debate team in high school, I went to one competition. The way that the conversations were had was I didn't have the right answers to questions. Like we would have a conversation and we'd build off each other's ideas to try to eventually get to a point where I would show that what I believe is actually right. Yeah. But to do that, I have to actually acknowledge what you're saying, because you're not just saying everything you say is not a lie or something. Yeah. And I feel like in these debates, they never do that. They don't actually build off each other's ideas. There's no cohesive direction these conversations go. It's just like, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. And it's like, how as a country, like, how are we supposed to actually build on ideas and figure out what is actually best for us, It's kind of just seems like they just talk just to show the few people who are down to believe them that the other person sucks. Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of, like, going into it, kind of, a lot of people already expected that this would kind of be a mess. Like these debates have like turned into kind of comedy. So I think the expectation is that like, well, at least like my expectation was that Trump was going to be aggressive and like kind of attack him on stuff, and that like in order to not seem weak, like Joe Biden would have to kind of like play the same game. Yeah. So it kind of devolves into like a pissing match.
Yeah. I thought yesterday Donald Trump attacked Joe Biden a little less than I actually thought he would. Yeah. I did think he was going to, hit him with the Sleepy Joe, hit him with a few of those, but I was surprised that he didn't. Because when I was watching the Democratic candidate debate as well for that election, it was very similar in that way too. It never felt like it was an intellectual debate. It felt like it was a debate between like your 10-year-old Twitter activist. It was like, where is the actual... I don't know. It just felt something was missing, But I know people always... I really want to go back and actually read the transcripts of like a Lincoln Douglas debate or something where like, how did those people talk? I doubt it was like this, this, But I was also thinking yesterday, I was like, I wonder how that would be. Because think about how many people actually took the time out of their day to go watch a debate live just so they can actually learn about their candidates and who they're actually voting for. I feel like I was like, damn, that would actually be a lot of commitment from the average person, from now where you can just hop on Twitter and be like, I don't want to watch the actual debate. Let me just get these quick sound bites and now I know I'm caught up. Yeah. And it's like you miss like a whole chunk of like whatever actual conversation they did have. You miss all of that just for the few segments of, oh yeah, Joe Biden told him to shut up. That's like, those are the three things you got from the debate. And it's like, you miss a lot of the large chunk of it. Yeah. Was there anything you were particularly interested in what they were talking about?
I thought a lot of it was kind of run of the mill stuff.
Big facts.
I kind of just I watched it because I was just interested in what was going to happen. It's just interesting. I think for like an undecided voter, I don't know how that would like. I mean, because I think part of these debates is like to try and persuade like an undecided voter like to swing to each side. And I don't know if this debate even like would help anyone decide. It really kind of, I don't know. I don't think it made either of them look good.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what type of people are undecided. Yeah, you know, because it kind of feels like the country is so divided that you already have a decision kind of made out for you. You know, it'd be interesting to see like the type of people or what in their head is making them undecided, or you know, because you pretty much know what both sides represent or stand for. You know, especially Trump. Like I feel like Trump is pretty like I guess, but I would think maybe people who are more like involved in terms of like politically, they might have like specific. But they don't even talk about policies like that. That's a crazy thing. Like Trump did not talk about a single one of his policies where like, this is what I'm going to do. And really neither did Joe Biden, honestly. You know, so they kind of just like, they get away with just like, you know, using some big words and like not really ever actually talking about what they're trying to do. Right. So yeah, that was one thing. Shall we move on to the next one? Yep. All right. Let's see. Boom. Books.
Nice.
Okay. Have you read any good books recently?
I read a couple books for work, but nothing like really for fun.
What'd you read?
It's just like these kind of pre-work books on investing and stuff. But I haven't really been keeping up with my books too much. What about you?
I was actually, before I answer that, I was going to ask you one thing earlier when we were talking about investing. I was like, do you have any good resources for people out there if they want to, you know, learn about investing? What is a good resource they could use?
I think you can actually find some good quality stuff on YouTube, and like as you're learning kind of basic stuff, like Investopedia is a really good resource. It's just like a website online. It'll help like clarify a lot of terms. I'm blanking on. There's a couple of like solid books that will like give you a good base.
You can just tell me later.
I can get back to you later. I'm
cool. Yeah, but recently some of the good books I've read, and I'm gonna ask you another question after this. I've been asking this to a lot of people, but I'm reading the Malcolm X Autobiography, and that book is just opening my eyes to a lot of just. I one thing, I love books about history, and I love autobiographies. So the fact that, you know, old autobiographies are a mix of both is like a perfect medium for me. It's just really interesting to see how culture was represented back then, what was important, how did people behave back then, what was cool, what was not cool. It was really cool to kind of see how all of those things have changed in only the last 70 years, you know. So that book has been really awesome for me. And so the question I was going to ask you is, I feel like I'm slowly building a list of books that have been like revolutionary to me, to like things that have like genuinely impacted the way I behave and think and live. What are some of the books that have, you know, impacted you and that come straight to mind? Tough question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for me, like one of my favorite books of all time is The Road by Cormac McCarthy.
Interesting. Never read it.
Have you read the book?
No. What's it about?
It's like a dystopic novel.
I love those.
Yeah, between kind of a father and a son, like kind of just venturing and figuring out what it means to live a life in like a dystopic world where everything is kind of not the way that society is, like that we think of as society.
It just all sucks, or what?
Yeah. Okay. It's just like it's a really dark and like gloomy book, but I think it's interesting because the son has like the father like came from like the world that we know, like, but his son was born post.
Those are the best.
Yeah, so it's like a really interesting dynamic and kind of, I don't know, it was an interesting take on like a father-son relationship.
Interesting. I will read it. It's called The Road?
Yeah, it's called
The Road. Okay, I will check that out for sure. Anything else that comes to mind?
I have to give it some thought. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, something I've been thinking a lot about recently is one of the kids I tutored last year. He was in 8th grade. And he was telling me about how he was reading The Outsiders. That was a book with the Pony Boy and State Gold and all of that. Yeah. And we were going over some of the themes. And one of the themes in that book was like how society plays a role on who you become. And how you're not like some sort of like free thinker. And there's these outside forces that actually play a huge role on who you become as a person. And that completely flew over my head when I read the book. I didn't catch one theme or think about anything like that. I was like, Stay Gold, Pony Boy. But a lot of the books that they subscribe in high school and middle school are actually really good books. But it's just at that, I don't know if it was just me, maybe some of the more intelligent people that were our peers understood some of those things, but for me, when I was reading those books, I didn't understand a single one of those themes. Like that didn't even make sense to me, or I wasn't interested in that, So I'm like, damn, like how can we like teach younger people to be interested in reading when the books we're giving them are already great books, Like I would say one of the few books that really like hit me was 1984, and that was one of the few books right before I graduated too. So I was like, okay, I'm already pretty old, but all those 6-7 years of English where we had great books, just I didn't gain one thing from any of them, which is really sad.
It's kind of a shame.
Yeah, it is so sad. Like
there are a lot of these great books, and like me too. Like I kind of glossed over them or just didn't really get it. I feel like a lot of these books, like if we read them at a different point in our life for the first time, like we really get a lot more out of it.
Yeah, no, big facts. Like I really want to read that book where everyone's stuck on the island again. You remember what that's called?
Everyone's stuck on the island.
It's like Piggy and. Maybe the Lord of the Flies.
Oh yeah.
I want to read that book again. I think that one's really interesting.
Me too.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. To Kill a Mockingbird, I remember that one's a really good one. I actually ended up reading this other book recently. It's The Giver. People read that in the 8th grade or something, and I never read it. I don't think. Have you read it before?
I read some of it.
Okay.
Crime and Punishment is also good.
Oh, okay. I have not read that one.
I read it for a class, but I never did.
Yeah, because The Giver was given to like 8th and 7th graders, and I read it, and I was like, this book is so over any age. There's no way you could be 12 or 13 and be like, I understand everything. I understand the power of knowledge. But I guess they tried to be like, okay, as long as you're thinking about it, maybe it will stay somewhere. You'll ruminate in there or something. But who knows, honestly. But next one. I love talking about books. Berkeley.
Sure.
Let's talk about that one. So you went there for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Nice. You finished on time. Yeah. How was that experience for you?
I think overall it's a good experience. Nothing bad to say about it. It's great. Met like some of my closest friends there.
Cool.
Academics is definitely very intense at the school. A lot of people are stressed out and like sad all the time, which is a shame. But I don't know. It's a good experience.
Nice. I think one thing, talking about that stress part of it, I feel like for all schools, one of the craziest things I think, and I remember I was talking to one of Sinsanjeev, who also goes to Berkeley a long time ago. One thing he was telling me about was the Imposter Syndrome. Yeah. And I feel like that is something that affects a lot of people in school. Mm-hmm. And I think somehow if we're able to actually understand that, it becomes so much less stressful because we're surrounded by so many extremely talented people that it's so easy to feel like we're not talented, because it's like we're comparing ourselves only on these 3 metrics, like what your grades are, where you're working and what internships you are, something like that. But it's like if we're only measuring these three things, it's very simple to be like, oh, you're better than me at this one thing, therefore you're a better human than me, Right. But like especially after you graduate, now seeing everybody doing their own thing, like maybe I'm a really good person at maintaining relationships, maybe I'm a really good like father or mother or whatever. Like there's so many skill sets that eventually come into play as a human being that there's no way that you can simply be like, this person is just better than me. There's just too many skill sets. So it's like to be able to go to school and be like, hey, I'm actually trying my best to learn, and there's a million people that I can probably do this exact whatever topic or something better than, but there's also a million people that can probably do it better than me, and that's okay, and that's just how it's going to be. I feel like that takes the pressure off your shoulders of thinking that you're the worst, because it's so easy to fall into that, because I've definitely done that.
I think that was entirety of my first year. It's kind of definitely felt the imposter syndrome thing. I think it's something that you kind of just takes time to like grow into understanding like, what you're feeling and like why, and then you kind of get over it, I think.
Do you think, what is something that you'd recommend to people who go to Berkeley from now, just ways that they can deviate or just chill?
I think you touched on a lot of what I would say. It's not to just try your best not to play like the comparison game, to realize that your self-worth is like not determined by grades, which is difficult because it's ingrained into your like psyche from high school and stuff. So at least the first couple years, like that mindset is still going to stick with you.
It's so weird.
For me, it was.
It's so ingrained, but it's such a weird concept. It's like I am literally at school to improve and get better, but I'm feeling stressed because I didn't do well on a test. Like I'm doing so much better today than I would have a month ago, but I feel no happiness from that fact at all. It's a weird phenomenon, I think we need to eventually instill something where people feel happy to be at school because they're like, I'm literally being better at whatever I'm doing today than yesterday because I'm in this institution to learn.
Right.
You know, which you don't get after this. After school, like, you don't get to sit in a place and just learn and get better every day. Like, that's such a great privilege to have, but yet people are stressed out of their mind. You know, it's like one of the nicest times in life, and it's like it runs by so quickly because everyone's like final, midterm, but it's like actually sitting there and being like, damn, I'm surrounded by thousands of people who are also trying to improve their life, who are trying to improve the conditions of people around them, who are trying to improve society, and it's like, this is a beautiful place to be. You know, I think like I started appreciating that more only when I was a senior. I was like, there are a lot of opportunities and cool things that are going on here. Like, I don't need to like just run through college like a lot of people do. But yeah, I would definitely, I would say the one thing I learned about San Diego, even when you went, I think that's something that you might have noticed, is like, it is definitely a very socially dead school. And one of the hardest things I think that it is for people to do there is like really just make friends. And like, I got lucky that I happened to be friends with my roommates. I don't know what my experience would have been like if those people weren't my friends, you know, like to actually go, how did you find friends when you first got there? I know you lived with two of our friends. So.
Yeah. I mean, I was like lucky enough to have like two people from like a high school friend group that I was able to kind of go into college with and not feel like completely alone in the beginning, which was nice, like to have like a solid base of friends that like I knew would always just be there for me. I don't know. I think like finding friends kind of just happened naturally, either through classes or just like clubs or just like meeting people randomly. I think if you try and force it too much, that's where it kind of becomes difficult. I don't know. Never really thought about it. It kind of just happens.
It does kind of happen. And sometimes it's so coincidental. Like, I made one of my closest friends literally because we were the last people to leave the class. And I was like, hey, I need a partner to work on this. You want to be a partner? And we ended up being closest friends for the longest time. Yeah, but how coincidental. You know? All right, next. Bum, 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 bum. I really wanted to talk about this. Because why people hate capitalism. That's the next thing I want to talk about. So you're actually the first person who brought this idea to my head, because in college I'm indoctrinated. I was taking this third world studies class and I was indoctrinated hard by why colonialism and capitalism suck. Those two words were literally just ingrained in my head. Like, whenever you think about those words, just say sucks, as if like, and that was one of the weirdest classes I'd ever taken, because they were not teaching you to critically think about any of these concepts. It was just like, here, these are two words, attribute them with everything negative there is in the world. And I remember we had went to Yosemite that summer and we were talking about capitalism and whether it actually, you know, was this total definition of evil, and it just brought absolute terror to everybody. And I feel like recently when I hop on social media or anything, I hear that same type of jargon all the time being talked about capitalism. And then I saw this one quote and it was like, it is very difficult to actually hate on the system that you're hating on with the tools of that system has instilled upon you. You know, it's very simple for us to sit here hating on capitalism when we're sitting with all the great privileges that capitalism has given us, you know. And that made me start thinking. I was like, I actually don't know much about what really is the, you know, root of capitalism and what is. So I wanted to ask you, like, one, why do you think people really feel this like hatred towards capitalism? And two, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hate towards, like, the hatred of capitalism is kind of, it's inherent to the system because it is driven by self-interest at the end of the day. But like the byproduct of it being driven by self-interest is that like there's often a sort of public good or like a benefit overall to just like society or like the living standard as a whole. But the way that like wealth is distributed under like a capitalist system, like, or our capitalist system, is very like top heavy, obviously. It's like, it's, people think about like the haves and the have-nots and stuff, and that like gets into your head and stuff, which is, but I think for capitalism, a thing that people, like you mentioned, I guess, that people don't think about really is that a lot of, not just like the conveniences, but like the advancements that we have as a society, like whether it's like medical, technology, et cetera, is kind of derived from the fact that we had someone make this development, although out of self-interest, like for a profit, but it led to a positive thing for like everyone. So like I'm not saying that there's no downsides to capitalism. There definitely is, but I think a lot of the positives of the system are like overlooked or like not given consideration in like a pros and cons type of. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah. Because I've read two simple, basic economic books, and both of them heavily favored capitalism. So it's just very interesting to see, like, in a lot of your economics books in schools, did they favor capitalism or did they oppose it?
I think in these classes there, for me at least, there was no, like, we would just learn what it is rather than like be given an opinion on it. It's just like, these are the different forms of like economic systems, and like this is how each of them are run, or whatever, and like the history of them, but not really like this is a good or
That's
bad.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you kind of have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah.
So what did you feel like was the kind of your cohorts, or like the people that you were studying with, or what did you think? What was the common opinion there?
I don't think people ever really talked about that. Like, I don't really know what people...
Really?
Yeah, no
That's
one really,
very
like,
interesting.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah, it's kind of strange to think about, like, given that we learn about all these systems and stuff, but no one really, like, talks about it.
Okay, that's interesting. So, one thing you said earlier that I wanted to touch upon, you said some of the cons of capitalism. What are some of those? What are some of the negatives of capitalism?
Well, like, I guess, like, the most obvious one is, like, it leads inherently to kind of, like, the rich get richer type of wealth distribution, which, depending on the way that you think about it, is like, for most people, will think that's a con. And it also leads to naturally leads intrinsically to kind of exploitation of like labor and a whole bunch of stuff like that. Yeah. Okay,
cool. And in saying that, are you saying that the other systems don't necessarily have those issues?
Not necessarily, but they probably have other issues as well.
Okay, but just not these specific ones?
Yeah.
Okay. Because if like one of these problems was, present in every single system, then that would just be inherent to, I don't know, maybe human nature or something, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Cool. All right, let's see next. We got a few more. NBA, baby.
Yeah.
Finals in 1 hour.
Ooh.
It starts right now, actually. What are your thoughts? Who's winning? Say it. We all know who it is. Just say it. Who's winning, bro?
You tell me who's winning. You tell me.
It's a 2 and a 3. Boom. LeBron James.
Yes.
No, they're winning. Are they winning in 4?
6.
Oh, the Miami Heat are winning 2 games?
Yeah. I'm giving it
That's
6.
funny. What are your thoughts on the Warriors? I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit. So next year they got 2nd round pick, and they have Andrew Wiggins. They got Curry and Clay coming back. Are they winning?
I don't know. I think I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, they are about to be really good. I think one thing I do want to talk about is how passionate and involved we were in basketball growing up.
Yeah.
And how it's interesting as we grow up now. I'm happy to say that I'm slowly moving away from that level of fandom.
I was literally just going to say how that was a core part of like our identity and or just like our friendship in general. Yeah. It was just like basketball, like the rivalry between teams, and how like strongly we were tied to like the teams that we supported. It was weird though. I think I was more like not addicted, but like more into basketball when like the team that I like, the Warriors, when they were like bad, and like when they started winning, when it was just like when the Warriors were like really really good, I kind of like fell away from the NBA and was like not really as interested.
They were just too good.
Yeah, they were too good, like, but I mean, as like a fan of the team, isn't that what you want? Like you.
Yeah, I guess that is an interesting phenomenon. I feel like that's probably common. Yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing to study, and I would love to look into how that process of like underdogs being loved, and like there's like a peak though. You're only loved this much, but once you hit that peak, boom. You know, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, you're loved, but when you hit that peak, I don't know how you measure that peak. All of a sudden after that, there's only hatred for you, and it's so weird. And it's like it happens with every team. Like Nuggets, everyone loves the Nuggets now. I promise you, if they keep making the finals and they're like stupid good, in 5 years they're gonna hate them. You know, and it's just like. It's really, I think Dwayne Wade was talking about it, about why LeBron is the exception. People have hated him, like, literally from when he entered the league. Like, people were hating on him from, like, day one. It wasn't like he was the underdog, people loved him. It was, like, people from day one didn't like him. And I think it was something with, like, him being crowned the king or something like that way before he had actually, like, quote-unquote accomplished something. But I think the phenomena of people hating, when it comes especially to sports, is something that's very interesting. Because it's not children. It's grown men. Adults, it's adults who are capable of rational thought, who are going out of their way to feel bad about their day because of a success of another grown man.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and somehow they're like justify it, and they'll be like, you watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians, what's wrong with you? Like, sports is nuts. Like, sports is literally the most crazy thing that people actually like get really riled up about. So I am happy that we are not, at that extent where I would literally tweet something hateful about the Warriors every day. I was like, oh my god, that's just sad. Yeah. Like, it's sad.
Yeah, we definitely
go play basketball. But yeah, last question.
Okay.
Oh no, I don't want to end on this. We're not talking about this. This is studying economics at Berkeley. We're not talking about that. No. We talked about that enough. Okay. Last notes. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to talk about or say? Have you been creating anything recently?
Been creating anything? Not really. That's something that I've kind of been wanting to do. In the beginning of quarantine, I was like trying to write more.
Really? What were you writing?
I was doing this blog, or trying to do this blog on like economics and stuff. But I was trying to make it fun. I was trying to make it like take complex kind of concepts and like make it accessible. That was kind of the idea. And it was like tied to COVID and economics and stuff like that. And then I just kind of got burnt out by it because it was kind of a depressing topic, so I kind of just left it alone for a bit.
That is a hot field though. I feel like that would blow up. I know this one philosophy page called Philosophy Bro. Yeah. Did I tell you about that? Yeah. No, and that page blew up to where like there are tens of thousands of people who like buy their merchandise, and that person has a career off just doing exactly what you talk about, where it's like you take these complex subjects and you like simplify it down so everyone can understand it and where everyone can learn something from it. I think that'd be super cool. Are you still working on that, or?
I mean, it's not something I'm not opposed to continuing in the future, but I kind of just let it sit. I've honestly just been chilling out.
I feel that. Honestly, it's nice to have that sometimes. I feel like, because with creating, I sometimes go through like, if you want to create the best thing you possibly can, I feel like taking time to just chill is a huge part of it. It's not something you can do every single day because you just get burnt out. Yeah. But cool. Any other things coming Big P's way?
No, I mean, it's just from now, it's just work. It's spending this last week and a half trying to spend time.
Is it going to be more than 40 hours?
Oh, yeah.
A lot more?
Double.
80?
Probably something around that.
For how many years do you think?
I think normally the first 2 to 3 years are kind of rough. Okay. And then after that, it kind of gets a little more manageable. Like, not only because, like, you are less doing kind of manual stuff, but also that you kind of understand what's going on more. Cool. So you're more effective.
And I'm excited to go back, honestly. Like, working from home is one thing, but like, I feel like especially since you're working in New York, like being there in the middle of that hustle and bustle where people are,
I'm excited for
that will be cool, like as opposed to like when you're working from home, it hits a little different. Like, it's just like, all right, I'm working now, cool. But yeah, well, thank you. I really wanted to get in with you. So yeah, all right, well, that was that whole conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed that. See you guys next time. Lit.